That is why everyone fears being alone. My beloved ones, the human mind, the human brain, has become a wounded, weakened entity. It is no longer a healthy center. It has turned into an unhealthy ulcer. That is why all our attention is focused on it. Perhaps you have not considered that when a part of the body becomes weak, all our attention naturally turns toward it. People only become aware of a limb when it hurts. Without pain, we hardly notice it. If there is a wound on the hand, then we become conscious of the hand. If not, we remain oblivious to it. Our brain has certainly become weakened in various ways, for throughout the entire day we focus solely on it, and nothing else. The healthier the body is, the less we feel it. We only notice the parts that are unwell. Now, the only part of our body we continuously feel is our brain. Our consciousness revolves entirely around it. We know it. We only recognize it. The wound has manifested there. Without freeing ourselves from this wound, without liberating ourselves from the constant tension and restless state of our mind, no one can progress toward the center of their own life. Therefore, today we shall discuss this state of the brain and how to change it. The first step is to clearly understand the state of our brain. If you sit alone for 10 minutes and sincerely write down every thought that passes through your mind, you would not be willing to hand that paper over even to your closest friend, because you will see that your thoughts are so chaotic and absurd that neither you nor anyone else could expect such things from you. You will notice that the thoughts are irrelevant, futile, and contradictory to the point that you might think you've lost your mind. If you earnestly record whatever arises in your mind for 10 minutes, you will be astonished at what is happening there. You will wonder whether you are sane or mad. We rarely look into our own minds for even 10 minutes to see what is unfolding, perhaps precisely because deep down we already know what is happening inside. Perhaps it is because we are afraid. That is why everyone fears being alone and seeks companionship 24 hours a day, whether by meeting friends, going to clubs, or similar pursuits. And if a person cannot find anyone else, they may resort to reading a newspaper or listening to the radio. No one wants to be alone because the moment you are alone, you begin to confront your true state. When others are present, we become absorbed in our relationships with them and do not become aware of ourselves. Seeking others is nothing more than an attempt to escape from oneself. The fundamental reason we care so much about others is that we fear our own self, and we know very well that if we were to know ourselves completely, we would realize that we are utterly mad. To escape from this state, people seek companions, look for friends, search for society, and gather in crowds. The fear of solitude, escaping the self. People are afraid of being alone. We become afraid of solitude because in being alone, we confront the true reflection of our inner state. We encounter the mirror image of our very selves. And that is immensely horrifying, terribly frightening. Thus, from the moment we wake in the morning until we go to sleep at night, we use every method available to escape from ourselves so that we do not have to face our own being. We fear that we might see ourselves. Humankind has invented thousands of ways to flee from oneself, and the worse our inner condition becomes, the more new inventions we create to escape from our own being. If we look at the past 50 years, we will see that people have devised more distractions to escape from themselves than ever before in history. Movie theaters, radio, television, these are all means to avoid facing oneself. People are growing increasingly restless. We seek entertainment. We make all sorts of arrangements to momentarily forget who we are because our inner condition is worsening. Throughout the world, with the advancement of civilization, drug use has increased. Recently, some new drugs, such as LSD, mescaline, marijuana, have been discovered and are becoming very popular in Europe and America. In every cultured city in Europe and America, among the educated, there is a relentless pursuit to discover new methods for people to forget themselves. Otherwise, humanity will fall into great difficulty. What is the reason behind all this? Why do we long to forget ourselves? Why are we so eager to erase the ego? And do not think that it is only those who go to the movies who try to forget themselves. Those who enter temples do so for the same reason. There is no difference. The temple is an ancient method to forget oneself. The movie theater is a modern one. If someone sits and chants Rama Rama, do not assume that this person is doing anything other than trying to forget their own self through the chant, just as someone else may be attempting to forget themselves by listening to a song in a film. There is no difference between these two types of people. Any effort to become entangled in anything external, whether it is Rama or a movie or music, is nothing other than an effort to escape from oneself. We all become ensnared in trying to escape from the ego in one way or another. This indicates that our inner condition is deteriorating and that we are losing the courage to face it. We are afraid to look in that direction. We act like ostriches. When they see an enemy, they hide their heads in the sand because it is dangerous to face the foe. According to ostrich logic, what is unseen does not exist. I am safe. But that logic is flawed. An ostrich might be forgiven, but a human being cannot be excused. Just because something is unseen does not mean it ceases to exist. If something is visible, then perhaps we can change it. But if it remains unseen, no change is possible. It will continue to grow within us like a wound, like an ulcer that we hide and refuse to look at. Our brain has become a wound. One day, if a device were invented that could see into the inner workings of each person, then surely everyone would commit suicide immediately. No one would allow another person to see what is unfolding within them. Someday, that might become possible. Even now, we can only be grateful that there is no window in our heads through which we can peer into one another's brains and witness what is occurring. The hidden truths, what people conceal versus what they express. What people hide and what they express externally are very different. What you see on someone's face is completely distinct from what is happening inside them. Outwardly, they might speak of love, yet inside they are filled with hate. They might say to someone, "Hello, I'm delighted to meet you. I'm overjoyed that I met you this morning." But inside they think, "Why must I see the face of this stupid person first thing this morning?" If there were windows to look inside everyone's head, we would surely encounter great difficulty. Life would become unbearably hard. We might speak to someone in a friendly manner while secretly thinking, "When will this person finally die?" There is one thing on the surface and something entirely different hidden beneath, and we dare not look inside to truly see. A mother and her daughter once lived together, and both fell asleep. One night, around 3 o'clock, the mother woke up and went out into the backyard. After a while, the daughter also awoke in her sleep and stepped into the garden. As soon as the old woman saw her daughter, she shouted, "You wretched wretch! You have stolen my youth. Ever since you were born, I began to age. You are my enemy. Had you not been born, I would still be young." And when the daughter saw her mother, she screamed, "You are a witch. Because of you, my life has become so difficult and dependent. You are always the rock blocking the flow of my life. You are the heavy chains upon my existence." In that moment, a rooster crowed and both woke up. Seeing the daughter, the old woman said, "My dear, why did you wake up so early? You might catch a cold. Come here, let's go inside." Immediately, the daughter touched her elderly mother's foot. She had the habit of touching her mother's foot every morning. She said, "Mother, you've woken up too early. Your health isn't good. You shouldn't rise so early. Come here and rest." You can see the difference between what they say in their sleep and what they express when awake. Anything a person says in their sleep is more genuine than what they say when awake, for it largely comes from within. What you perceive about yourself in a dream is far more real than what you see in a marketplace or in a crowd. The surface of a crowd is made up of makeup and pretense. Deep inside, you are an entirely different person. You might manage to conceal much by plastering some good thoughts on the surface, but inside, the fire of thought burns fiercely. Outwardly, you may seem to smile, yet that smile might be concealing a torrent of tears. In fact, it is possible that you have trained your smile solely to hide the tears within. This is something that many people do. The illusion of the outer self, facing what lies within. Someone once asked Nietzsche, "You are always laughing. You seem so joyful. Do you really feel that way?" Nietzsche replied, "Now that you have asked, I will tell you the truth. I laugh so that I do not begin to cry. Before my tears can start, I suppress them by laughing. I hold them back inside me. My laughter must convince others that I am delighted. And I laugh only because I am so afraid that laughing lightens the burden. Sometimes it comforts me." No one has seen the Buddha laugh. No one has seen Mahavira laugh. No one has seen Christ laugh. There must be a reason. Perhaps there are no tears inside, so there is no need to smile to hide them. Perhaps there is no sorrow left inside that needs to be concealed by a smile. Whatever disorder exists within has already vanished, so now there is no need to adorn oneself with the decoration of laughter on the outside. A person with a malodorous body needs to spray perfume on it. A person with an unattractive body must strive to appear beautiful. A person who is sad inside must learn to smile, and a person filled with tears must maintain a smile on the outside. A person full of thorns inside must attach flowers to themselves on the outside. Human beings are by no means what they seem. They are entirely contradictory. They are one thing on the inside and something else on the outside. And if others are deceived by what we display on the outside, so be it. But the problem is that we deceive ourselves by believing we truly are the image that others see. We view ourselves through the eyes of others. We never see ourselves directly as we truly are. The image formed in the eyes of others deceives us, and we become afraid to look within. We want to see the image that others have of us, not our own true self. What do people say? We become overly concerned with what others say about us. There's nothing more than that curiosity to know. We think that we can recognize ourselves through the image formed in the eyes of others. This is truly astonishing. Even to know ourselves, we have to look into the eyes of others. People fear that others might say something bad about them. They feel happy if others say something good about them, for their self-knowledge depends on others' opinions. They do not have direct knowledge of themselves. They have no direct experience of truly knowing themselves. That experience might occur, but it does not because we try to escape it. The first step in confronting the mind is not to be preoccupied with what others say or how they present themselves. Instead, one must directly face one's own true nature. In solitude, we must open our minds completely and see what is there. That is an act of courage. The greatest act of courage is the decision to step into the hidden depths within oneself. True, profound courage is daring to look at oneself in complete nakedness. The Emperor's Hidden Chamber, Unveiling the Mad Truth. Once upon a time, there was an emperor. Every day he would disappear into a room built in the middle of his palace. His family, everyone in his household, his friends, and his high officials were all astonished by this habit. He always kept the key to that room close by, and when he entered, he would lock the door from the inside. The room had only one door and no windows. During each 24-hour period, he would spend at least 1 hour inside that room. Even his concubines knew nothing about this chamber, for he never spoke of it to anyone. If someone asked, he would only smile and remain silent, and he would never hand over the key. Everyone was puzzled by this, and their curiosity grew day by day. What was he doing in there? No one knew. He would remain in that locked room for an hour, then he would leave silently, tucking the key into his pocket, and the next day he would do it again. Eventually, people's curiosity reached a peak, and they conspired together to discover what he was doing. The high officials, the concubines, even his own children became part of this plot. One night they made a hole in the wall so that they might see what he was doing when he went inside. The next day, as the emperor entered the room, everyone peered through that hole, but whoever looked would immediately avert their eyes and exclaim, "What is he doing? What is he doing?" Yet no one could say what he was doing. The emperor had gone inside and stripped off all his clothes. Then he raised his hand to the sky and proclaimed, "O God, the one who wears clothes is not me. That is not my reality. This is my reality." And he began to dance wildly, shouting and cursing, behaving like a madman. Everyone who looked through the hole was instantly shocked and whispered, "What is the emperor doing?" We always thought perhaps he would perform some kind of yoga or recite a prayer, but this, what is he doing? Then the emperor spoke to God. "The silent and serene one who stands before you in garments is utterly false. He is the one who has practiced. I have created him through my own efforts. This is my reality. This is my naked truth, and this is my madness. If you accept my reality, so be it, for I can deceive the people, but how could I deceive you? I may display for all that I am not naked by wearing clothes, but you know full well that I am naked. How can I deceive you? Before you, I am nothing but a madman. Before God, all of us are mad. In truth, cast God aside, and if we look within ourselves, even with our own eyes, we will appear mad. Our minds have become utterly confused, yet we have never paid attention to this issue, so we have not developed any method to resolve it. Facing our inner mind, overcoming suppression and fear. The first step is to confront our own mind directly, but we must understand 2 or 3 points for that confrontation to occur. Only then can we begin to think about how the mind can be changed. The foremost requirement for facing our mind is to let go of all the fear of knowing ourselves. What is there to fear about knowing oneself? We fear that perhaps we are evil. We fear that we might discover we are untrue. After having nurtured an image of being good, we appear to be good. We are holy, innocent, authentic, and sincere. Our fear lies in the possibility that deep inside we are not genuine but false. We fear uncovering that we are non-religious, conflicted, hypocritical, and unholy. We fear that the image of ourselves, as we currently conceive it, might turn out to be false. A person who is so afraid can never truly face their own mind. It is very easy to wander into a forest, to sit boldly in the dark, or to confront wild animals. But it is extremely difficult to stand courageously before the wild, untamed person hidden within you. That is an enormous challenge. It is not at all difficult to stand under the sun for years. Any fool can do that. It is not hard to stand on your head. Any idiot can be taught circus tricks. Nor is it very hard to lie on thorns. One quickly adjusts to them. But the truly formidable challenge is to have the courage to look directly at the person within, regardless of whether they are ugly or mad, however they may be. Therefore, the first thing is to let go of fear and be ready to look at yourself with courage. A person lacking this courage remains in turmoil. We care about attaining the soul. We care about knowing existence, yet we lack the courage to face ourselves directly and simply. The soul and existence may seem distant, but the true reality is our mind, our brain. The primary reality is the center of thought to which we are most intimately connected. First, we must see it, know it, and recognize it. The initial effort is to come to know your own mind in solitude without fear. For at least half an hour each day, give your mind the opportunity to express itself as it is. Shut yourself in a room, like that emperor did, and allow your mind complete freedom. Tell it. Think, reflect, let it happen. Remove every self-censorship that has prevented anything from surfacing. Discard all of it. Let your mind be free. Allow whatever arises to arise. Permit anything to appear. Do not stop or suppress anything. Be ready to know what is inside. And you should not judge anything as good or bad, because the moment you judge, suppression begins. Anything you label as bad, your mind starts to repress. And anything you label as good, your mind begins to use as a cover. Therefore, you do not need to judge anything as good or bad. Whatever is in your mind, however it may be, is to be known as it is. If you let your mind be completely free to think, reflect, and feel, you will feel terrified and wonder if you're insane. But the essence is to know what is hidden inside so that you can be free from it. Knowledge and realization are the first steps to liberating yourself from it. We cannot overcome an enemy we do not know or recognize. There is no way. The hidden enemy, the enemy standing behind you, is even more dangerous than the enemy before you, the one you know, the one you recognize. The first point is that because of the restrictions and prohibitions we have imposed on our minds from all sides, we do not allow our mind to express itself spontaneously. We have stifled all of its spontaneity. Everything has become unnatural and false. We have concealed everything behind veils. We wear false masks, and we never allow our mind to express itself directly. Therefore, initially, at the very least, allow it to express itself directly before you so that you may become familiar with all the content that has been hidden and repressed. Most of the mind has been suppressed in darkness. We never bring a light there. We live on the balcony of our house while inside the rooms are in complete darkness, and we do not know how many insects, spiders, snakes, and scorpions are hiding there. In the dark, they inevitably gather, and we are afraid to bring a light there. We do not even want to think about the state of our own house. It is essential for the seeker to let go of this fear. To bring about a revolution in our mind and thoughts, the first step is to let go of fear, to be ready to know yourself without fear. The second step is to discard every form of censorship and restriction we have imposed on our mind. And we have imposed many restrictions on it. Education, moral lectures, civilization, and culture have imposed many prohibitions. Do not think about this. Do not allow such thoughts into your mind. They are bad. Do not let them in. When we suppress them, those bad thoughts are not destroyed. They merely sink deeper into our subconscious. By suppressing them, the thoughts do not disappear. They sink further inside us, because what we suppress comes from within, not from somewhere without. Remember, anything in your mind does not come from outside. It comes from within. It is like a stream flowing from a mountain, and we block its open path. The stream will not be destroyed. It will flow deeper, and it will find other ways to emerge from the mountain. Originally, there is one stream, but now there might be 10 because the water splits into 10 channels. And if we block those 10 channels, there will be 100. Everything comes from within, not from without. And the more we suppress it, the more it becomes bad and degenerate. Then it finds new ways to emerge, new complications arise, and we continuously suppress it even more rigidly. The foundation of our education from childhood is that if a thought in our mind is wrong, suppress it. That suppressed thought is not destroyed. It sinks deeper into our subconscious. And the more we suppress it, the deeper it sinks, and it holds us more tightly. Anger is wrong, so we suppress it. And yet a suppressed stream of anger can burst forth through us. Lust is wrong. Greed is wrong. This is wrong. That is wrong. Whatever is wrong, we suppress it, and in the end, we find that we have become exactly what we have suppressed. How long can you block those suppressed streams by closing off their channels? And the mind operates in a certain way. For instance, whatever we try to suppress or escape from becomes the center of our mind. Whatever we try to avoid becomes irresistible, and the mind begins to focus on it. Try it and see. If you try to escape from something or suppress something, your mind immediately converges on it. The subtle trap of conditioned power. Milarepa was a mystic living in Tibet. One day, a young man approached him and said, "I want to attain some power. Please give me a mantra." Milarepa replied, "We do not have any mantras. We are mystics. Mantras are for magicians, for sorcerers. Go to them. We have no mantras. Why do you need power?" But the more Milarepa refused, the more the young man assumed that there must be something there. If not, why would he refuse? So he kept coming to Milarepa day after day. Large crowds always gather around saints, people who drive others away with a staff or throw stones at them. The crowd believes that a saint must possess something special, otherwise he surely would not drive people away. Yet we do not realize that attracting people through newspaper advertisements or by throwing stones is the same trick. Propaganda is essentially the same. And the second method is even more manipulative and cunning. When people are driven away by someone throwing stones, they do not understand that they are actually being drawn in. This is a subtle way of doing it. And indeed, people come without even realizing that they have been deceived. The young man thought that perhaps Milarepa was trying to hide something, so he began coming every day. Finally, growing tired of his persistence, Milarepa wrote a mantra on a piece of paper and said, "Take this. Tonight is a moonless night. Read this mantra 5 times during the night. If you read it 5 times, you will gain the power you desire. Then you will be able to do anything you wish. Now, go and leave me alone." The young man snatched the paper and turned to run away. He did not even thank Milarepa, but before he had stepped down from the temple steps, Milarepa called out to him, "My friend, I forgot to tell you one thing. There are certain conditions attached to this mantra. When you read it, you must have no thoughts in your mind about monkeys." The young man replied, "Don't worry. I have never had any thoughts like that in my life. There is never any reason to think about monkeys. I only need to read this 5 times. There is no problem." But he made a mistake. Even before he reached the final step, monkeys began to appear. He became very frightened. He closed his eyes and saw monkeys inside. When he looked out, even where there were no monkeys, he saw some. It was night, and every branch of every tree seemed to have monkeys. It appeared as though monkeys were everywhere. By the time he returned home, he was extremely anxious, for until then, he had never thought about monkeys. He had never had anything to do with them. He went to bathe, but even while bathing, monkeys were with him. His entire mind became haunted by one thing: monkeys. Then he sat down to read the mantra. He picked up the paper, closed his eyes, and found a throng of monkeys inside teasing him. He became terribly frightened, yet he persisted throughout the night. He changed his posture. He tried sitting in this way, that way, in Padmasana, in Siddhasana, in various yoga postures. He prayed, he bowed, he implored. He shouted for anyone to come and help him drive away the monkeys. But the monkeys were stubborn. They were not willing to leave him that night. By morning, the young man was nearly driven mad by fear, and he realized that the power of the mantra was not so easily attained. He saw that Milarepa had been very cunning. He had set a difficult condition for him. Milarepa was crazy. If monkeys were to obstruct the use of the mantra, then at the very least he should not have mentioned them. Perhaps then, the power of the mantra could have been attained. In the morning, he returned to Milarepa nearly in tears, saying, "Take back the mantra. You have made a huge mistake. If monkeys are an obstacle to using this mantra, then you really ought not to have mentioned them. I have never thought about monkeys, yet all night they chased me. Now I will have to wait until the next life to attain the power of this mantra, because in this life the mantra and the monkeys have become unified. Now they cannot be dispelled." The monkeys had indeed become unified with the mantra. How did they become unified? His mind insisted that there must be no monkeys, and thus the monkeys appeared. Whenever his mind tried to drive the monkeys away, they showed up. Whenever his mind tried to escape from the monkeys, they arrived. Prohibition attracts, rejection invites, suppression seduces. Our mind has grown so weak because we do not understand this simple truth of the mind. The second principle: letting go of attachments and embracing pure observation. The second point to remember is that there is no need to cling to what should or should not be present in the mind. We must be willing to observe whatever arises in our mind without making any selections or imposing any conditions. In this way, we can begin to see what the mind truly is in reality. The simple fact of the mind's inherent contradictions is well understood by advertisers all over the world, yet religious leaders have not grasped it at all. Propagandists throughout the world understand this, but those who teach in society do not. For instance, when a movie is advertised as adults only, children go to see it, sporting fake mustaches worth a few cents pasted on their faces. Advertisers know that to attract children, one must use the phrase adults only on the advertisement. There are also women's magazines labeled for women only, which are read not by women, but mostly by men. When I inquired with the distributors, they said, women only buy the for women only magazines occasionally. They usually purchase the magazines meant for men. Advertisers understand what attracts the male mind in ways that religious leaders and moral educators have yet to comprehend. They continue to teach foolish things such as do not be angry, struggle against anger. A person who fights with their anger and tries to escape it will be haunted by anger for the rest of their life. Such a person will never be free of it. Only those who face their anger squarely, without battling it, can truly free themselves from it. The second point is to relinquish any sense of conflict or struggle with any state of mind. Instead, cultivate a simple desire to know, to understand. I must know what my mind is. One must enter one's own mind with this uncomplicated intention. That is the second point. The third principle: no judgments on the mind's arising. And the third point is that one must not make any judgments about whatever arises in the mind. Do not judge anything as good or as bad. Goodness and badness are two sides of the same coin. Wherever there is bad, there is good on the other side. Wherever there is good, there is bad on the other side. Evil is hidden within the good, and goodness is hidden within the evil. The virtuous person has the good side of their coin facing up and the bad side down. Thus, if a virtuous person turns evil, that person proves to be worse than the vilest of evildoers. And if an evil person becomes virtuous, the goodness seems to pale in comparison. In an evil person, the goodness is completely hidden. Only evil is manifest. If that person changes and becomes virtuous, other virtuous people will seem diminished beside them. The vibrant hidden power of goodness arises from within that person. Valmiki and Angulimal are good examples. They were once very evil, and one day they became virtuous, illuminating all other saints with their goodness. The virtuous and the wicked are not different. They are two sides of the same coin. But the mystic is a third kind, a person in whom neither goodness nor evil exists. Both sides vanish together. The mystic is neither virtuous, nor a gentleman, nor a saint. Evil is always hidden within the gentleman, and virtue is always concealed within the wicked. The mystic, absolutely, is a third phenomenon. He stands apart from both good and evil. He has no relation to either. He has ventured entirely in another direction, where there is no issue of good or evil. From admiration to animosity. A young monk lived in a village in Japan. He was very famous and enjoyed great renown. The entire village worshipped and respected him, and songs in his honor were sung throughout the community. But one day, everything changed. A young woman in the village became pregnant and gave birth to a child. When her family asked whose child it was, she said it was the child of that young monk. How long does it take for admiration to turn into enmity? How long? It took not even a brief moment, for in the minds of the admirers, judgment is always latent. The mind merely waits for its opportunity. The moment admiration ends, judgment begins. Those who once expressed respect can, in an instant, transform into irreverence. Those who once walked beside a person can, in a single moment, turn to behead that person. There is no real difference between respect and irreverence. They are two sides of the same coin. Soon, the entire village attacked the monk's hut. For a long time, they had expressed their respect for him, but now all the anger they had long suppressed burst forth. Now they had the chance to show irreverence, so they all ran to the monk's hut, burned it down, and hurled the baby at him. The monk asked, "What is happening?" The people shouted, "Are you asking us what is happening? This child is yours. Must we tell you? Look at your burning house. Look into your heart. Look at that child and that girl. We don't need to tell you that this child is yours." The monk said, "Oh, is that so? Is this child truly mine?" When the baby began to cry, he started to sing a lullaby to quiet it, and the people left him sitting beside the smoldering ruins of his hut. Later, at the usual mealtime in the afternoon, he went out to beg for food. But who would give him any today? Today, Every door he approached was bolted. Today, groups of children and adults began to follow him, mocking and pelting him with stones. He went to the house of the girl who had the baby and said, "I may have no food for myself, but at least give some milk for this poor child. I may be at fault, but what fault does this helpless little one have?" The baby cried, and the crowd stood there, until it became unbearable for the girl. She collapsed at her father's feet and pleaded, "I'm sorry. I lied when I named that monk. I wanted to save the child's real father, so I used his name. I don't even know him." The girl's father became confused. This was a grave mistake. He ran out of his house, fell at the monk's feet, and tried to take the child from him. The monk asked, "What is happening?" The girl's father replied, "I'm sorry, it was a mistake. This child is not yours." The monk responded, "Oh? Is this child truly not mine?" Then the people of the village said to him, "You're crazy. Why didn't you repudiate it this morning?" The monk answered, "If I cared about your condemnation, I surely would have cared about your respect as well. I act as I feel is right. You all do as you feel is right. Until yesterday, you felt that respecting me was right, so you respected me. Today you feel that not respecting me is right, so you withhold your respect. But I remain indifferent to both your reverence and your irreverence." The people said to him, "Sir, you should realize that you will lose your good reputation." He replied, "I am neither evil nor virtuous. I simply am myself. I have abandoned the idea of good and evil. I have given up all concern with becoming virtuous, for the more I try to become virtuous, the more I find that I become evil. The more I try to escape from evil, the more virtue seems to vanish. I have discarded that very idea. I have become completely indifferent, and the day I became indifferent, I found that neither virtue nor vice remained within me. Instead, something new was born, something even better than virtue, and it does not even bear a shadow of vice. The mystic is a third kind of person. The journey of the seeker is not the journey toward becoming good. It is the journey toward becoming a mystic. Therefore, my third point is, do not decide whether the thoughts that arise in the mind are good or evil. Do not judge or praise. Do not say that this is evil or that is good. Simply sit beside the flow of your mind, as if you are sitting on the bank of a river, watching the flow, the water flowing, the stones flowing, the leaves flowing, the wood flowing, and simply observe in silence on the bank. Embracing the mind and the miracle of silence. These are the 3 points I want to share with you this morning. First, one must have tremendous courage to face the mind directly. Second, one must not restrict or impose predetermined conditions upon the mind. Third, one must refrain from judging any thoughts or desires that arise in the mind. Do not label them as good or evil. Your attitude should be one of simple indifference. These 3 points are essential for understanding the degeneracies of the mind. Later, in the afternoon and evening, we will discuss what can be done to dispel these degeneracies and go even further. But these 3 points must remain remembered in your mind. Now, we will prepare for morning meditation. First, there are 2 points to understand about morning meditation, and then we will sit for meditation. Morning meditation is a very direct and simple process. In life, anything that has meaning is very simple and direct. In life, the more futile something is, the more complex and troublesome it becomes. In life, the higher something is, the simpler and more direct it is. It is a very direct and simple process. The only thing you must do is sit in silence and quietly listen to the myriad sounds all around you. Listen, and you will experience miraculous effects. Usually, we never truly listen. As I speak here, if you think you are listening while also thinking, then you are making a grave mistake. Sound reaching your ears is not the same as truly listening. If you're thinking while I speak, then you are not listening, for the mind can only do one thing at a time. It can never do two things simultaneously. Either you are listening or you are thinking. When you are thinking, listening ceases. When you are listening, thinking stops. Therefore, when I say that listening is a miraculous process, I mean that if you listen silently, your internal stream of thoughts will naturally come to a halt, because by its very nature, the mind is incapable of doing both at once. So, devote your entire effort to listening. This is an act of affirmation. If you try to forcefully expel your thoughts, then the error I just described will begin to occur. It is an act of denial. Thoughts cannot be thrown out simply by force, but if the energy of the mind, which is normally channeled into thought, begins to flow into another channel, then those thoughts will automatically weaken. Doctors treating a paralyzed person often say, "Let go of the notion that you are paralyzed. You are not truly paralyzed." Yet the more that person tries to expel the thought that they are not paralyzed, the more they reinforce their sense of paralysis. If I were not paralyzed, why would I keep repeating, "I am not paralyzed"? Each time that phrase is repeated, it deepens and intensifies the feeling of paralysis. What that person's mind needs is a complete redirection. There is no need for them to try to forcibly stop the thought of paralysis. If they can have the opportunity to engage in something else, then their paralysis, being a creation of the mind and not of the body, will surely vanish. It was fortunate that his house burned down. What might have later seemed like a disaster turned out to be a blessing. This time, the fortunate event was that his house burned because his entire attention suddenly shifted to the fire. His mind moved away from the paralysis it had held on to, and that illusion abruptly vanished. It was nothing more than an illusion. Now, let the practical experiment this morning be about listening silently to the song of birds, to the sound of the wind, to the murmur of all the sounds around you. Listen in such a profound silence. Focus your attention on one thing. I am listening. I am listening fully to everything that is happening. I am doing nothing else, only listening. Listening completely. I emphasize listening because when you listen completely, the continuous flow of thoughts in your mind will become utterly silent, since these two processes cannot occur simultaneously. Therefore, concentrate all your effort on listening. This is an act of affirmation. If you attempt to hurl your thoughts away, then the mistake I have just mentioned will begin to occur. That is an act of negation. Thoughts cannot be expelled by forcefully trying to discard them. But if the energy of the mind, which typically flows into thought, begins to divert into another channel, then the thoughts will automatically weaken. Chains of thoughts, not chains. The miracle of silence in the mind. In reality, there are no chains, only networks of thoughts. When the human mind becomes distracted, its thoughts wither and lose vitality, because thoughts derive their life from our attention. Thoughts do not possess life on their own. The more attention we give to a thought, the more alive it becomes. The less attention we give, the more dead it becomes. If attention is completely withdrawn, thoughts become lifeless, they die, and they vanish immediately. That is why I say you should devote all your attention to listening. Decide absolutely that even the faintest chirp of a bird must be heard, not missed. You must hear everything that happens around you. Hear it all. Then, you will suddenly notice that your mind is entering a deep silence, and your thoughts begin to fade. There is only one thing you must do. Simply relax your body. Yesterday, I told you to tense your brain, but perhaps you misunderstood. Relax your mind. Do not strain it. That is unnecessary. If you become fixated on the idea of straining your brain, then that itself becomes a problem. So, discard that idea. It is not a part of meditation. I mention it only to help you understand the contrast between a tense brain and a relaxed brain. Do not worry about that idea. Just let it go. And now, relax. Allow your mind to relax. Relax every muscle and nerve in your brain that is tense. That is the issue of relaxation. The point is not to learn the art of keeping your brain tense, but to forget the art of keeping it tense. I tell you this only so you understand the difference between a tense brain and a relaxed brain. For now, set aside anything you cannot understand. Simply relax it. Therefore, please keep a respectful distance from one another. No one should touch another. Use the space in front, come here or go out back, but no one should physically interfere with another. Allow your body to relax completely, and then slowly close your eyes. Close your eyes gently so that they are not strained. You should not shut your eyes tightly, for that will cause tension. The muscles around your eyes are closely connected with your brain, so allow them to relax completely. Let your eyelids lower gradually, as a child's do. Allow your eyelids to descend slowly, relaxed. Then, relax every muscle of your face and head. Imagine a child's face, completely relaxed, without any tension. Make your own face just like that, completely slack and relaxed. Let your body relax as well. The moment you let everything relax, your breathing will slow and become quietly steady in its own way. Then, do one thing. Simply listen silently to any sound coming from all around you. The crow will make its call, the birds will sing, the child will speak on the street. Listen to them in silence. Listen continuously, and soon everything will become silent inside. Listen, the birds chirping, the wind rustling through the trees. Whatever sound comes, listen to it silently. Listen, and gradually, within you, the murmur of silence will begin. Your mind is becoming silent. Keep on listening and listening. Your mind is growing silent. Your mind is becoming silent. Your mind has become silent, utterly silent. Deep silence is present within. Just listen to it. Only listen. Listen. And gradually, your mind will become silent. Your mind is becoming silent. Your mind is becoming silent. Your mind is becoming silent. Keep listening and listening as your mind slips into absolute silence.